All right, welcome back to the Fabrication Station podcast. I'm your host, Mike Wagner from Cornfield Customs in Milford, Ohio. Today we have Brian Ward back as our co-host.
Hello.
And we have a really cool guest this week, Adam Brock, Avacado Brock. Any other also known as or anything else you wanted to?
No, Avacado is kind of the nickname, but yeah, happy to be here.
Cool, yeah. I mean, you've got some really cool stories and kind of, I don't know if it's your lifestyle or your professional career is kind of neat. I mean, so just tell us a little bit about what you do and...
I'm Adam Brock. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm a fabricator, sort of specializing in roll cages. I think what people know me most for is my mobile roll cage installs.
Yeah, you're like the nomad roll cage guy.
Yep. Travel around the country in my Sprinter and put people's cages in their car.
Yeah, I mean, even if you can talk about that a little bit, that's pretty cool because you've come over and got some parts, and I've seen your setup. So like your bender hooks into your hitch and like does the notcher and everything, or?
Yep. So I actually don't use a notcher first off. So I have a very limited tools that I bring everywhere, but it all fits in the back of my Sprinter van. The Sprinter's sort of set up half workshop in the back and then half living in the front. It's the third rendition of my vans that I've been through. I had 2 Chevy vans beforehand, but you start to go through quite a bit of bills keeping those things on the road, so I decided to buy a more reliable, newer vehicle. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you travel with some dogs.
Yep, I traveled with my dog Mudflap. She's a born and raised rally dog. She's kind of a fun story. She came up to me during one of my races and like literally just a dog roaming around the pits. We're like, whose dog is this? And we kept her through the rally, and Monday went to the vet, and turned out she was pregnant with 10 puppies. So yeah, put the mobile roll cage business on hold for a little bit. Had people bring their cars to me, but that was pretty crazy. But she's been a road dog ever since.
That's very cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so tell us more about kind of what you do, like where you've been, interesting stories from on the road and other people's shops.
Yeah, I mean, haven't really broken too far out west, but I've gone as far as Austin, Texas. I've been to New England, Upper Peninsula, Michigan, bits down in kind of Appalachia. So I've kind of, traveled all along the eastern half of our country. But yeah, my whole thing is show up with a roll cage tube on my van, camp out in your driveway for maybe 5 to 10 days, and we build your car together. I think people... I find myself doing a lot of work with people that are pretty skilled fabricators themselves, and I think maybe too scared to tackle the project of building a roll cage from scratch. So it's kind of nice. I can show up, they can take the week off work, and we can kind of build it together. I think a lot of people sort of think that it bothers them if they kind of hover over me, but I actually kind of enjoy it because I think some of my favorite projects are where I can deliver exactly what the customer wants. I think that's something that's more achievable when I'm coming to you rather than, sometimes I feel like when people bring their cars to me, I've got their car hostage and I'm like doing whatever I want to it.
And they can provide input the whole way through.
Yep. The mobile thing started kind of organically. I never once sat down and decided that I wanted to start a mobile business. It was sort of it all starts with rally racing and my love for rally, and part of the biggest thing that separates a rally car is having to build the car having to have a roll cage. So I was sort of always a trained metal fabricator, and it's sort of once I got into racing and I needed to do more of the performance fabrication, that's when I started to dig into cars and that sort of fabrication. But
yeah, and I bet that's really handy, when you're at a race or an event, and if somebody fails, tech inspection or they've got an issue, Avocado's over there with his unit, he'll hook you right up.
Oh yeah, totally. And I've had to fix some people's cars. Luckily, no tech issues. It's usually like a car comes in at a rally and the skid plate is Swiss rolled, piece of T6 aluminum somehow is a Swiss roll. We have to makeshift something and tack weld some kitchen spatulas into the to the ground or something. Yeah, it's been crazy.
Yeah, because I've always talked about that with going to Bonneville.
Yeah.
You know, the new trailer I'm building, it's got the capabilities to run a TIG welder, and it's got onboard air compressor. I'm like, man, I should like take some tubing and my bender, just have a little workshop in there, a mini mill, a mini lathe.
Yeah.
Because doing tech, you're 100 miles away from Salt Lake, so if you need roll cage tubing bent, you're driving 2 hours to get there.
Oh yeah, dude.
And I'm like, man, this would be an awesome thing to have, not to really profit, but to go there and, hey, we need this bent. Can you help us out?
Totally.
And keep everybody racing. And
yeah. And I mean, that is kind of how all of my business started. Is it didn't start out with me trying to make money. It was just, I built myself a roll cage, and a friend of mine was like, hey, do you want to build mine? And I'm like, sure. And then it sort of snowballed, and always, so I never could afford a house and a shop, so I always had to choose one or the other. So I always lived in my shops in vehicles, so whether it was a truck or a van or something. And I moved shops a whole bunch to the point where I really had my fabrication setup dialed in to where I could kind of pick it up and move it anywhere I needed. And some of the friends were like, hey, do you want to come to my place and you can camp. We know you like living in the van and hanging out. You want to, build the roll cage here? I was like, sure. And then it sort of organically became what it was once it kind of, caught some traction.
Yeah. And I found, everybody I know in any of the fabrication industries, the people that get into it like I'm going to get rich or I'm doing this to make money, they never do. They always fail because they're focused on the money.
Yep.
For me, what I do started is I was building a car for myself. Somebody saw it. Hey, I want one of those. And it, like you said, organically evolved into profiting from it. It's the same thing. If you go in, oh yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to make money at it.
Yep.
You're destined for failure because you're looking at the wrong things.
Absolutely. And I think, starting it organically, I took baby steps. I started with just literally a tube bender, an angle grinder, and a 110 MIG welder. And that's basically all I had for, honestly, probably too long. I should have just, for self-care, bought some nicer tools. But I have seen people where they're like, okay, I'd like to start, like, let's say a machine shop. So they just drop an absorbent amount of money on a bunch of machines on loan, hope that it's going to work out because their whole goal is to, like, have a profitable business and make money. And I'm just like, I don't know. I started small and just incrementally got bigger, and I'm finally starting to get to a point where I'm like, I'm caring more about the craft more than I think for a little bit there, I cared more about just quantity. I want to make sure everyone has a roll cage and I can do what I did. But like at a certain point, you realize like, 5 days on the road, your stuff is only going to be this good, whereas if you bring the car to me or something, or we can figure out a way that I stay for 2 weeks, we can make the end result a bit better.
Yeah,
so.
take more time and better fitment. And
Yeah, that's like one of the hardest things is like I find myself now, like I've got a cage in the shop and I'm kind of excited I got to a good stopping point. I'm going to come here, talk about fab for a little bit, and then go back with fresh eyes, see if I like what I did, and if I do, I'm going to weld it in. When you're kind of on a mobile gig, you don't have that luxury necessarily. You're a bit more, pressured into the situation. So a lot of times, there's a little detail about every cage I've done that I'm just like, I wish I just had like one more day. I would have like approached that very different. But
it's kind of neat how that works too. A lot of times on a fab project, if you just walk away for a second and you come back and you come up with those, well, if I do it this way, it'll solve this problem or it'll fit better.
Yep, totally. Or even like, just overcomplicating something. You realize like, holy crap, I just put 3 tubes in here when I could just one. Right? Yeah, it's wild. Just like a single sleep, come back the next day, how much better things can be. So, yeah.
So you have a brick and mortar shop also besides your mobile business?
Yep. I have a shop over in Coleraine, kind of on the west side. It's 4-car. I can usually do so. mostly can only take one client car at a time, so I don't work I work single project at a time. I'm just not the kind of person that can bounce around. Things will just get out of hand fast. You know.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's one of those things. It's all personality based. So with me, I get bored really easy.
Yeah.
And ADHD, random squirrels. So I have to have 4 or 5 projects going because my focus is only good for about 40 to 80 hours. So by the time I get to 80 hours, I'm fried and I don't even want to look at it anymore. So I go to a new project, and that helps free up what it cleanses the palette on the project I'm working on. And by the time I come back around, it's that new fresh eyes and new motivation.
Yeah.
And I can keep pushing.
Yeah, I sort of envy that. I'm not very good at that.
See, I'm the other way. Like I wish I could focus on just one thing at a time.
Yep.
But I'm a glutton for punishment. All the client cars, my stuff, all the other home stuff, podcasts, traveling.
Yep. Oh yeah.
I'm 100 irons in every fire.
Oh yeah, totally. Yep. And that is like the one of my favorite things from the mobile fab is when you show up and you have nothing to do that week other than complete this project. Mm-hmm. There's nothing else. And when I was able to work pretty much like a week on, 2 weeks off, week on, 2 weeks off, and most of those 2 weeks was just traveling to the next location and or getting materials or something. But there's something nice about when you are leaving, you're truly leaving that project. It's just, it's gone,
Yeah. Because I've done some traveling stuff, like worked at other people's shops across the country.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. Kind of like you said, you get to go and that's your thing.
Yep.
I would always beat all the normal employees in, and I would stay later. Because what else am I going to do? Go sit at the hotel and eat cookies? Like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm there to work, so I'm going to put 12 to 14 hours in because that's what I'm there for.
Yep.
And the only time I didn't enjoy that was, I think it was 2016. I was at a shop, where was I? I was at a shop for a week. I can't remember where that one is. And then I went to Cal Auto Creations in Omaha, Nebraska for 2 weeks. And then I had to go to Wisconsin to finish up a project for SEMA. It was like last minute.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, hey, where's your connecting flight going home? I'm like, Chicago. And he's like, skip your connecting flight, get a rental car and drive up. So then I was at his shop for 4 days, flew home, did my laundry, picked my wife up, and then we went to SEMA for a week.
Holy crap.
So I was gone for like a month, and I was just fried because it was just too much at once.
Oh, yeah.
There was no downtime at all. It was, leave one shop, catch a flight, so 4 hours later I'm in another shop, and it is too much. But I like the traveling aspect of it because you get to learn from other people and see how they do things. And you have to get creative because you don't have all the luxury of everything you're used to.
Yeah.
Totally.
Using different tools and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I've gotten a lot better about at first there, especially like, when I was first starting out, I couldn't be as picky about the work locations I would get, and I kind of had a very brief, broad terms and conditions. And every gig, that terms and conditions kind of got a little bit longer because there's something that I'm just like, okay, adequate lighting. Didn't think I needed to put that in there, but I guess that's something I got to, put in there now.
Electricity, indoor plumbing.
You'd be surprised. There's see, the problem is if I talk about the specific gigs, the person's going to know who I'm talking about. But there've been a few that, let's say, the electric situation wasn't so good, so we have to go knock on the neighbor's door and be like, "What's your electric situation like? I have a 100-foot cord here. Can I power a welder off your house? Thank you." Right.
Yeah, if not, you're climbing telephone poles.
Yeah, we're just
splicing in.
Yeah, figuring something out. Yeah, so I've gotten a lot better about. I won't just go anywhere anymore.
Yeah. Now on your rider, you only get red peanut M&Ms.
Yeah. No green ones. Yep. Totally.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super cool. Like you've bought some parts and stuff off of me, so we've known each other for a while, and I always thought that was super cool that you travel around the country in a van just building race cars.
Yep. There's like so it all comes back to rally, because I have my own rally car, and that's how I learned how to fab, was building my own stuff. But
and you race it's a Volvo, isn't it?
Yep, Volvo 240. So that's pretty fun, and but with racing, you're already traveling so much that you almost need some sort of camper to be comfortable already. So. And then with my lifestyle that I had sort of, when I was younger, just living in shops and being sort of nomadic, it all just fell into place perfectly. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So do you work on other race, like drag racing or road racing or?
I will. I like am pretty honest with somebody when they hit me up. Like my rally is what I know best. You know, I know all the way the loads are, the kind of things the car is going to see, what sort of fab needs to be done to those. I feel like I can produce a really good rally car. Road racing, a lot of the same stuff applies, you know, as far as chassis load, like what sort of suspension design is going to be benefit from a certain roll cage design. But like drag racing and a lot of off-road stuff, I don't have a whole lot of experience in. So I really haven't done a whole lot of, I've done a few, like wrapping up some people's drag racers and stuff, but other than that, I'm not too well versed in that world. I try to keep it, because the thing is I can only do so much cages a year. I probably say I'm averaging 15 to 20 a year. Yeah. And that's a little, you know, I much prefer to
stick with what you know.
Yeah, and like really do it well. You know, I probably could bust out more stuff, but I would prefer to do a limited amount, you know, of something I really know.
Spend more time and do more quality work, like you were saying.
And like I said, the most rewarding thing about it is when I can really deliver on a client's, you know, needs. And that helps because they're also looking for my expertise into like how should the design be. And I can't really do that with like forms of racing I don't know. Yeah. So I would be just sort of playing dumb. And I can't really connect on that level. I'm sort of looking to them like, what exactly do you want? Because I don't know what is good.
Because if it's someone just getting in a rally, you're able to help them. Yeah, you should do this. I understand you want this, but here's why you might want to change that. Or
totally. And a lot of it does start with like fab. I think a lot of things, because rally cars, they're just stripped down road cars, but I think a lot of people try to keep them that way. And a lot of things I do are like, no, strip it to a bare shell, build it from the ground up, you know, plumb new lines, plumb new stuff, and your rally car will be so much better. And when we do that, then all of a sudden the fab list gets a lot bigger, and we're able to like, okay, this is where the battery's going to mount. Let me knock out that, because otherwise you're left with like, gosh, I have so many things to still install on this car, and he's already gone, so, you know.
And it sounds like rally's a lot like every other form of racing, you know, drag racing, road race guys, land speed. There's really no middle ground. You have the very low budget, low effort guys, and then you have the higher budget, higher effort guys. Like there's nothing wrong with either one, but there's really not a middle ground, you know, that I found. It's either high or low.
Totally.
And I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like. You've got the guys that want, this is a production car and it still has the factory back seat in it, but I need a roll cage to run this race.
Pretty much. Yep. Yeah. And I think some of the thing that I hoped to accomplish when doing, you know, what I started was to get more people that maybe couldn't afford, because like not only do you have a roll cage bill, if I'm 8 to 10 hours away, you've got 3 days off work, you know, and then next thing you know, there's a few extra grand just in that roll cage bill. I think I saved a lot of people money that maybe otherwise wouldn't have been able to, you know, put together a car. Because I do think there actually could be more of a middle ground in a lot of form of motorsports. I think it's very, I think people tend to err on overspending right away.
Yeah.
And
So how does like someone contacts you about building a roll cage? How does this process of go like from where they say they contact you, then where does it go from there? What steps does it go through?
Well, they contact me, we get a hold of their goals, you know, and we kind of exchange usually a few bits of just like, okay, what are you looking for, all this. But then I'll call them and we'll figure out what best works, whether it's, you know, me coming to them dropping the car off to me. But then usually what we do is we get some sort of deposit together. I go buy materials and then I schedule a date and I show up, and that's it. I try to keep it as simple as possible. Just hit me up, we'll find a date and exchange some money and we'll make it happen. But luckily I haven't had too many testy clients or anybody that's, tried to take advantage of any of the services or, show up, do a bunch of work and have some issues or something.
Nobody knocking on your van at midnight looking for extra services.
Yeah, no. You'd be surprised though how many people like, well, while you're here, I'm like, sorry, dude, I cannot.
While you're here, you ever clean gutters?
yeah, totally. Your van's pretty tall. You can like reach up there. Yeah.
Yeah. So how is it with Rally with like material itself? Like I get asked a lot for land speed stuff if I'm using 4130, and same thing on the streetcar projects I do. For my applications, most of the time I use DOM because of the abuse it's going to see and 4130 fatiguing, and most people don't normalize it very well. So
Yep.
Is Rally kind of the same thing to where they prefer a DOM versus a chromoly?
Yeah, chromoly's actually banned.
Nice.
There were a few accidents off air. We were sort of talking about door bar designs and roll cages, but there's a few accidents where chromoly tube was used and it had actually impaled because it broke clean instead of bending, and the people bled to death. So that sort of ended Rally in the late 2000s. Was sanctioned by SCCA, and I wonder if some of the designs could have been, because I don't mind 100% using chromoly. I think it has its time and place. But yeah, no, it's banned. DOM's really popular, and actually a new material that I've been using that I was pretty reluctant to, I kind of talked a lot of smack on it, is the Docal R8 tubing.
Yeah, I haven't used it yet. I know we talked about it last time you were here.
Yeah, it has some weird things that on paper I was like, I don't know about this. It's a seamed tube, first off. Just bothers me. And the rules, they're allowing extremely thin-walled tube, like some 065 in some places and 083 in other places. And so I was just very reluctant. I'm like, this doesn't seem like it's a seamed tube. Like, how can it be this good? But then working with it's wild because it's the first time it's ever been metal. So it's not recycled, nothing's in it, and it's completely cold process. So there's no, like a TIG welder, oh my gosh, like you wipe it with some acetone, it's ready to weld. Like there is nothing you have to do to it. And it's extremely hard like chromoly, but I don't know how to explain. It's like soft and hard at the same time. It acts more like a mild steel, but like if you just like upped the durometer a little bit. Okay. But it didn't have the same brittle feeling as chromoly does.
Yeah, and just to clarify, because I'm sure somebody listening is going to be like, oh, you're talking about Delcol being a seamed tube. DOM is still a seamed tube, even though they say it's seamless.
Right.
It's just rolled and it's drawn over a mandrel to thin out the seam. So we're not saying that DOM is completely seamless.
Yep.
But because every time I talk about seamless tubing, I always get that one keyboard warrior that's like, well, let me tell you, there's a seam in there.
Oh, yeah. CDS is the only true.
Yeah.
Yep. No, it's been cool working with that because we're able to build a lot lighter of finished products and roll cages. Oh.
So where does that come from? Like, who determines what materials you can use and where, and like how does that come about?
So most of Rally and the rules that are, enforced are based off the FIA, which I couldn't tell you what it stands for, but it is mostly European, sanctioning bodies. They sort of dictate through rigorous crash tests the way the cages need to look and what they're allowed to be. And and FIA actually strictly calls out several tubing materials that we can't really get here. T45, like you can get it, but it's not very readily available, and cold drawn seamless, which you can get, but in the U.S. we have specific rule call-outs allowing DOM because it's a lot more common and it's a bit easier to get your hands on than some of the specialty tubes that the FIA calls out. But
that's pretty cool that they actually do the crash testing and see what it can handle. So that's
that's crazy because they'll put every few years they'll put the latest configuration in, put all the little dots, and send it through crash tests that do like frontal crash, direct side crashes. Because the thing is with rally cages is they're not necessarily designed to take a big, large brunt load like maybe a stock car would or something where they're going to be hitting a wall at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Rally's kind of more designed for an isolated load and like a long tumble down the road.
Yeah.
So the way that everything's designed, there's a lot of tubes in a rally cage compared to, I think most other forms of motorsport because there's no safety in the course. You don't
know what direction the hit's going to come from.
Yep, exactly. So every inch sort of has to be able to take that load correctly. And that's something I strive to do too in my work is I have had a few people test my work pretty badly, and I got to examine the chassis after the crash, and it's crazy where there's some things you're like, holy crap, like that is so important that I had those line up the way they did. And then there's some bits where you're like, that I put way too much effort into that because the tree didn't know the difference. But no, the designs are pretty crazy.
Yeah. So is there like a guideline, like point A has to be?
Yeah, there's within millimeters, everything's dictated on where it can fall. You have a few options, like if you use option A, in the main hoop bracing, you have to use option A in the overhead stuff. If you use that different option, then you got to do this in the rear. So there's a bunch of different configurations you could have, but
are they very specific on? It sounds like they are if they're telling you that. And it's sometimes other forms of racing are pretty tough because there's so much left to interpretation.
I actually find that like rally is less specific in certain ways. Like there's no call out on like in road racing, things can't be like in shear load or something like the rear stays can't be in shear. There's no specification other than location. So they're like, it must fall within this. So you can kind of, pick your poison on how you want to actually have a tube terminate or I think it's kind of loose. It's cool because you can tell there's a bunch of people getting the same rally cage, but every single person has a different flavor about what they prioritize.
Yeah.
And I have things that I care about in mine that might be different from a different shop.
Mm-hmm. But. And it's interesting, like, Brian, you've seen with the land speed stuff with you helping me out on the Roadster, is I wouldn't say that they're vague or they're lax. Land speed racing has some of the strictest rules, but the roll cage part, I think I don't have a rule book in front of me, so it's, roll cage shall protect driver from any and all angles. So you're in a metal sphere.
Yeah, totally.
And it says see example A and example B for your type of car, and it's just all the stuff from the NHRA handbook with the different types of cages. But like that's what's really cool about like rally, and I know a lot of drag like the new drag racing, was it 6.0 cert or the small tire?
Yeah. When
you build a full tube chassis, it tells you exactly where each tube needs to go for what you're doing. I kind of like that. Some of the stuff I've done before is it shows this is what you need versus everything's open to interpretation as long as you're protected. And then you show up and they're like, nah, we don't like this.
Yeah. The only weird thing with rally that I wish they would be a little more specific is if you have a 1,800 pound, I don't know, an 1,800 pound car, but just an 1,800 pound car, you have to put the same roll cage that a freaking truck would put in. Like there's no call out for a different tubing size or anything. So every car has the same exact cage in it. I'm like, I kind of wish there was a bit more of allowances on, if your car's slow and light, it should have less gauge in it. And if it's big and heavy and fast, it should have more gauge in it. So some of the stuff's a bit backwards in a way.
Tube diameter and wall thickness doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, it's a specific call out at the start, no matter what. If it's DOM, it's 0.95 inch and 3/4. If it's Docal R8, it's inch and 3/4, 0.83. Like no matter what, every single car.
It makes it easy when you're purchasing material. You know what you're gonna need.
Totally. Yep. Yeah, it's nice. You're like, oh, I have 2 sticks left over. Good thing I can actually use that for the next one. Sometimes you get crazy different weights, and you're like, well, I probably don't need to put this 120 wall inch and 3/4 tube in this Mini Cooper might be a little overkill.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and we're kind of touching base on one of the questions that was for later on, so we'll just cover it now.
yeah.
Just so we can kind of call out the question, is how do you know how to build a cage? Like, so with you, what we were talking about is there's a book, right? A book
Yep.
or a worksheet or something that tells you X, Y, and Z. And I think that's how pretty much any form of racing is there is the NHRA rule book for what bracket you're running, rally, land speed racing, road racing. There's always going to be some kind of booklet, pamphlet with the recommendations. And one thing I found, and I always tell people, especially in land speed racing, it's the minimum requirement.
Yeah.
You know, most of the time they're not going to complain if you add extra safety stuff. You know, this is the bare minimum we want. And if I don't know how it is with your field, if you want to add a couple extra tubes because it makes you feel safer.
Yep.
You know, in land speed racing, as long as it's not going to cause any problems if you're in an accident, you know, something that's going to impale you or limit you getting out of the car.
Totally. Yep. Nope. Same thing in rally. Yeah. The thing is with rally, there are already so many tubes that a lot of times the challenge is how can we meet the rules and meet our like chassis requirements. Like if you have really tall suspension towers, you know, you need to brace those because they're going to move in a rally scenario. So you kind of have to be like, okay, well, we don't want to just add extra tubes. Can some of these required tubes fall at that suspension location so that it's not only meeting the rules, but it's also
serving
bracing
two
the car?
purposes.
So you do have to get really kind of thrifty with your tube choice and your design. So it's spelled out, but at the same time, you could just go to the floor and make it easy, but you're not going to have any benefit from that roll cage. So I find a lot of fun in figuring out how I can do the most with the least amount of tubes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like the rest of us where you like the challenge aspect of it. If you had to build the same cage every day in and out, it wouldn't be nearly as fun. You know, it'd be more of a production job. And,
Totally.
I don't know. I think it's fun when you're fabricating is to make it as simple as you can. Just delete all the stuff that's not needed and make everything dual purpose if you can. And
Oh, yeah.
then when someone looks at it, it's like, how does that even function? There's not enough there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
I struggle with that. Everything I touch gets overcomplicated. Like me and Brian talk about it all the time with, you know, the Roadster is supposed to be my simple car. And it's simple compared to others, but it's still pretty complicated overall.
Yeah. Yep. No, I totally feel that. I just had a recent project. It was a Honda, and he cut so much of the body away that essentially the roll cage is going to be the structure. And we were like, man, we were about to throw so many tubes in here. So I really like the design I ended up coming up with, but it utilizes just 3 tubes and it really braces everything really well.
Nice.
Like those are my favorite designs, is when you can achieve a lot with a little.
Yeah. And is that car on your social media, or is that a top secret car?
Nope. It's on my social media. It's a recent one. It's a road racer. He's building a pretty crazy car. It's a Honda on steroids, but he's very, very fast. So I'm excited to see that thing finish. He's got it painted and just about done.
Oh,
so
cool.
That's always cool to see.
Yeah.
Like your work out
Yeah.
there.
So your effort get finished and actually get used.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'll have you throw it out again at the end of the show, but what's your Instagram and stuff so people can check it out while we're talking here?
Yeah, totally. It's avocado_Brock. That's on Instagram, and that's spelled AVOCADO, avocado_Brock.
Cool.
But yeah, and honestly, it's like Instagram's almost the only form of social media that I even do. I built a whole business on it. I think a lot of people kind of talk some smack on it being a legitimate business platform, but it's worked for me.
Yeah, I mean, I make money from it. You make money from it. Who cares?
It so easily connects people.
Yeah,
It's pretty cool.
I'm not built for OnlyFans, so, so Instagram it is.
If I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about like the certification? Do they have certification? You have to get chassis certified like you do with other motorsports?
Yep. So every cage will get a logbook. Basically, it's been thoroughly inspected by a technical director at whatever. There's 2 sanctioning bodies that cover rally. It's the American Rally Association and NASA Rally Sport. So you either get a logbook with either one of those 2 organizations. You can race with either one, but you have to basically get a book that says that it's been inspected thoroughly. They, put some goo on it, make sure all the wall thicknesses are good. it's very important that every single inch of the rally car is 360 degree welded. So I do a whole bunch of like shifting the whole structure in the car just to be able to get to all the welds. But somebody goes through and specs around every single joint everywhere. So
Is that per season or is that per event?
it's once in that entire car's life.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So once that car is assigned a logbook, it's actually a VIN that's assigned a logbook. So if you sell that car, the logbook goes with the car. So
That's how it is with land speed racing, but it gets re-inspected and signed off on every event in case you've
Yeah.
modified something that they
Yep.
they make sure it's not changed.
Totally. Yeah. No, I think that maybe wouldn't be a bad thing
Yeah.
if some rally cars were inspected. There's some.
Or maybe annually, not,
Yeah. Totally. Yep. And I mean, the rules change so often that you end up having to modify stuff anyway. And once something gets modified, you have to have a note in your logbook. And
You just note it, and then the next event they
Yep.
check it out. And,
Yep.
Okay.
So for a bunch of cars that were built 2009 and prior, right now, all have to have these very specific tubes welded in that almost none of them have, and some of them can be kind of challenging. It's kind of sad actually seeing a lot of cars not legal to run anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the name of safety.
That's right. Yeah, well, cool. You guys want to get into some of the questions?
Yeah, let's do
Sure.
it.
Cool. So the first question is, how has the cost of steel and other materials affected business?
Boy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a deep question, and it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, you can't make mistakes.
Yeah.
I was actually experiencing this earlier. Just if you make just a 3 foot long section now, that's like a sizable portion. That's $50. You're
yeah.
like, holy crap! I do that twice. I just might as well burn $100.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that I actually we were just talking about the Docal R8 tubing. I never considered that until the prices of DOM got so high. And they actually aren't too different in price because the thinner wall thickness kind of evens it out. So I've started using new materials. So I'm kind of glad that I tried that. It's kind of, I like working with it. So.
Yeah, and like I found, like I tend to talk a lot, but tube and plate has tripled for me.
Oh, yeah.
So before I would keep 2 or 3 4x8 sheets of everything in stock.
Yeah.
Quarter inch, 3/16, 16 gauge. Now I don't. Like I use as much, like I'll keep every remnant I have to hope I can get something out of it, just due to the fact that I don't want to drop $800 or $900 on a sheet of 3/16 plate. Same thing with tube. If it's less than 5 inches long, it goes into the recycle bucket so I can make something out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy. I am thankful that at the beginning of my business that I didn't try to stock up on a bunch of tubes. I've always been from the start, like, customer right at the upfront pays for the materials, so it's no skin off my back. Like, that's all covered. So yeah, thankfully I don't know how you do it, but like just stocking up on a bunch of stuff right now seems just impossible.
Yeah.
I just don't know how you could just drop that kind of money.
Yeah, because like how I would do it would, I would have it on hand,
Yeah.
10 sticks a 1 3/4 DOM, 10 sticks a 1.5 inch, just so I didn't have to wait on the, on the delivery. That way, because I think you've come over and bought some tube before.
Yep.
Same thing. Somebody's like, hey, I need a piece of tubing. Can you help me out? Yeah, I got plenty in stock.
Totally.
And with the way the prices and stuff is, no.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, no.
Yeah, totally. No, it's more inconvenient for you to have to go source more and pay for more, because who knows, it could have gone $20 up just
Overnight.
since
Oh,
that conversation. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it really sucks, and I feel bad because I'm having to push that off on my clients.
Yep.
And some of them have gotten upset because before there was no such thing as a minimum.
Right.
Like with cutting brackets or whatever. Hey, man, I need one. No sweat, come pick it up.
Yep.
Now it's, if I'm ordering a sheet, there's a $100 minimum.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just due to the fact that I can't buy $1,000 sheet of 1/4 inch plate for your $20 bracket. You got to help me out somewhere.
I'm thankful I'm just dealing with tubing and some flat plate. I can't imagine requiring sheets. Like what you're doing is just,
Yeah, and like now all the rectangle stuff I'm bending, I mean, I buy it 20 sticks at a time from North Carolina. So, $13 a foot. Oof. Yeah, it's very painful.
Yeah, no joke.
And
no joke.
I mean, that kind of leads me on to my next thing is like with the cost, I've noticed things have slowed down quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because before, like with the mandrel bender, I was bending 20 sticks a month.
Yeah.
And now it's not anywhere near that. You know, it just slowed down because the material cost is getting more expensive. So I think that scares people away.
Yep.
And the shipping is getting expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of putting a hurt on all fabrication.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I've definitely had to supplement, you know, like I said, I'm going a bit maybe away from quantity and more for quality because, you know, if I can charge double and have half the amount of clients, that sort of equals the same revenue at the end of the day. But it sort of sucks because I would love, I never wanted to be the cheap guy, you know, but it was a kind of a beneficial thing for me not to have any overhead. So I could still make a good money and still be cheaper than the other guy. But now it's like, and then like on top of that, I mean, the gas prices just to get places. So it's just like steal everything. It's just way more. I mean, if we want to get into real like money, is like you used to be able to do a whole roll cage for less than $500, and now over $1,500. That same exact roll cage. And just in materials. That's just ludicrous. Yeah,
because like when I was doing the Streamliner, I think I started building the chassis for it in 2018. I bought all the tubing for that car. I think I paid $400 or $500 for it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a ton of tubing.
Yeah.
And now I bought, what was it? I bought 2 sticks last week for $500 of inch and 3/4 120 wall DOM.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah. It's having, like, even the designs are changing in subtle things because I'm like, I would love to do all of this out of inch and 3/4, but if there's an optional extra, guess what? I'm going to do it out of 1.5 inches because it's just cheaper unless you want to pay, like, you know, that much more. But it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I hope things start to normalize. Like even tools that I make, I have had to cut down on because material's so expensive, so I can't offer those to people. It's just, I hope this gets figured out in the future, I mean, we all hope it goes back down, but I don't see that happening. At least just normalize. Like, this is what you're going to be paying for the next decade. Suck it up. Totally. This is where it's staying, not it fluctuates by $100 every week.
Oh, yeah. And just only in the direction of getting worse.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm like, hopefully my worry is there's not really much incentive to bring it back down, you know, because we're all still paying it. And like, I'm going to continue. Like, actually, no, I'm not. Nope. We're all going to not buy steel.
Yeah. And that's the problem. The only way to kind of drive the prices back down is, you know, either ramp up production, which I don't see happening, or everybody stop buying it.
Yep.
But we can't.
Yep.
You know, when this is what we do for a living, you can't just say, like you said, wash my hands of you. No more round tube.
Totally. Well, and like the thing is like maybe this could tie back into just like this whole podcast and just metalwork in general, and like it is the best solution for every problem. Is, you know, you can't really like, okay, I guess I'm gonna start using wood or like plastic. It's like, no, like if you're in the automotive industry, it's gonna be metal. And you know, other avenues, I have a few like architectural buddies that are able to sort of change their designs and, you know, go away from steel from the design. It's like we have no option. It is just steel.
Well, that's the thing. Like, even not that we could do a carbon fiber roll cage. Yeah. But even composites for body materials, the raw material to do composites is getting expensive.
Oh yeah.
So it's just everything in this industry is kind of getting out of hand.
Yep. Maybe it'll inspire some more thrifty builds and more.
Just don't use exhaust tubing or anything crazy like that, like the old guys used to do.
No, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that.
Not that thrifty.
No, not that thrifty. Like, how about we build a 2-wheel drive car instead of a 4-wheel drive car? Like, that's thrifty.
Yep. Our next question is, what's your procedure for laying out and calculating your bins for doing chassis and cage work?
A surprising lack of math. I'm pretty hold my thumb up and close one eye kind of guy. I think that's kind of, again, what has helped me in this business endeavors. I don't know if you can really, you know, CAD out an entire design. Yeah. Especially, you know, what I've found is you can do all the numbers, and if one thing's off, then all of a sudden all the numbers are off. So you end up doing it by eye anyway. But yeah, I'm pretty organic with my process. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I used to try to do it. The first bender I had was a JD squared, and it comes with a little worksheet. This is how you calculate what's lost, and it never worked.
Yeah.
I could never get it to equal what it said on paper.
Yep.
So then it evolved. I had each material I would bend into a 90, and I'd bend into a 45, and I'd lay on the ground, and I'd draw it all out with chalk and straight edges, and I'd calculate it that way, and I could get super close. And then I started learning CAD, which I still do it organically. Like, I'm not a 3D modeler to where I build the whole chassis in 3D.
Right.
But I'll measure what I need, and I'll come in and I'll draw it in CAD, and it gets me pretty much spot on.
Yeah.
So I used to be all by thumb on the ground, and I got tired of kneeling down. But now I've switched over to using bend tech. I've got bend tech for the mandrel bender.
Yep.
So I'm like, well, I have it. I might as well use it. And it's pretty on point.
Yeah.
And the reason I like it is it calculates everything. Like, it markup, cost.
Yeah.
Cut exactly to this length, like down to a 32nd.
Wow.
That way you're not wasting.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, no, I'm very similar. I've got a 90-degree bend that sort of shows where the bend truly ends, because that's always tricky, and just basically lay it up, mark on the car, and measure between the bend distance. But yeah, I'm trying to get a little bit more, by the numbers. I think there was some slight asymmetries and some stuff, and I'm just like, you're better than that. So,
yeah.
Numbers help prevent that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm the same way. I suck in math. We talk about that at lunch. Like, I can't calculate a tip. Like, I had to get my calculator out and figure it all out. Math is my downfall for sure. And tube's tricky in general.
Yeah.
And then when you start doing everything, multiple bars and door bars and everything, it just comes together and everything gets changed exponentially.
Oh yeah, I always have struggled with like specifically A-pillars and like how the FIA designs them, because you have to have, like most racing is they have that twist in them, and just calculating that twist is super challenging. But yeah, I'm able to get it pretty close and get the fitment where it matters, where I'm happy with it. But I don't know about you, but I'm always like, next one, it'll be better.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's how everything is. The more you do it, it's a double-edged sword. You're super happy with the outcome, but there's room for improvement.
Oh yeah.
So it's like you're constantly chasing the next high of I got to do better, I got to do better, I got to do better. But that makes us better fabricators exponentially, because we're always pushing to be better. We're not stagnating just by good enough.
Totally.
The good enough mentality ruins everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm always finding myself with roll cages trying to pick my poison on where I can get, because I found that if you get the tubing to fit super tight and follow the body line, and when you have to drop it down to get the top welds and get some nooks and crannies, you're never as stoked about the welds. So then you're like, okay, well, the next one, I'll give myself a little bit of breathing room, and now you're able to do a nice little pretty weld down in that corner, but you're like, I wish it was a little bit tighter. So finding that happy, you're never satisfied.
Yeah.
It's different than building a chassis and then just setting a body over it when you're trying to build it inside the body.
Yep. There's lots of times too where you're, it is better as many points as you can have welded to the body is, to the roll cage is better. So I'm trying to fit the main hoop to where it fits, and you can stitch weld the main hoop with the A-pillars all stitched to the chassis. It gets really challenging. Can get yourself into some corners where you're like, well, now I have to cut a big old access panel to get to this backside weld or something crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I would struggle with that a lot, because the cars I do, I usually throw on a rotisserie and spin them. And some of the spots I get into are hard even on a rotisserie, so I can't even imagine doing everything on the car in a tight spot. I mean, standing on your head.
Totally. Well, and it's like there's a lot of bits of the car that people don't think about. Like if you have a coupe car, the door bars, like where they meet the main hoop is hidden. So, you have to account either, you're going to slide the whole cage forward, but then, you fit the front too far to where you can't go forward, and you have to shift this whole thing to get to where all of the welds look as good as the ones that are visible.
Yeah.
That's always my goal. It's very challenging. The order of operations is extremely important.
And those are the things that you can't really teach anybody. You have to screw up a lot of stuff, and you're like, damn it.
Yep, totally. Oh, there's some of my early work, you're just like, doing some tubes that 6 tubes fall into this one thing and you can't get any of the backside welds. So you just have to just hog welds in there and make sure everything's touched. And now you're like, oh, if I would have pulled the whole cage out forward, I could get through that very comfortably, put it all back. My favorite thing is when people do look at some of the work and I get the like, how the heck did you weld
do
that
that? Yeah.
question? That's like the highest form of flattery that I can have.
Yeah. All right. Our next question is, are there any other forms of racing you're interested in?
I wish I could lie and say yeah, but like, man, it's been rally from day one, and like, of course, I enjoy other forms of motorsport. As like, a certain petrol head, you can just, I could go to anything with an engine and enjoy myself. But as far as like it enough to where I would participate myself, it's just rally all day. So the texture of driving on dirt roads, I don't know.
Yeah. So what spiked that? What got you into that?
I mean, it was, again, organically. When I'm not the typical car guy that I was never really super impressed by super fast cars, or I didn't really quite understand like what the point was. It wasn't until like I was 16, got a little Corolla and bombing back roads that I'm like, wow, driving's just awesome. And then I found out that through internet videos that rally racing was a thing, which is just taking economy little cars, going as fast as you can on dirt roads. I figured out that was a thing. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. And just got obsessed with it ever since. Just like I said, hits a spot. There's a texture about I just can't find it anywhere else.
Yeah, it's definitely impressive. You watch some of the top guys in that sport, and it's like, how do they do that? How can you drive that fast? Not, they're setting up for a turn before they ever see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, you have to. I'm learning that hard with so I came from a front wheel drive car, which is very forgiving. You can kind of flip it around all corners and you'll be fine, to a rear wheel drive car that's really long wheelbase. And the only way to get it around some of the tight stuff is to do crazy driving techniques. Like there's a thing called a Scandinavian flick, which is, you're full set up to a right for a left corner. And that's the only, you have to drive that way. Otherwise you won't make it around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, the little tricks and stuff, how they use the course to benefit their car, whether it's front wheel drive, rear wheel drive. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah,
that it's something that you don't really see in other motorsports.
Yeah.
Using the course as a tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and with rally is you're not the only one in the car. You have a navigator telling you all the corners that you've done a thing called reconnaissance, and you make your notes on the road. You only get to see that corner once, and then you got to hit it full flat out, and you hope your notes are good. But there's something fun about that. They say racing is, oh God, I'm going to butcher this. Rallying is 1,000 different turns once versus you hit one turn 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like with your co-pilot, that's a whole different thing. Like it seems like every team has their own language.
Mm-hmm.
You can't take your navigator and put in a different car because they wouldn't know how to communicate.
Yeah. Well, there is like a somewhat uniform language. We call it Gemba, and it's a unit of measuring severity.
Because like it's like this is a turn 4.
Yep. It goes 1 through 6. 1 being essentially like a hairpin 180, and a 6 being a barely little bit in the road. But yeah, we all sort of use that same thing. But I have a bunch of different notes that I use specifically that mean just look means down the road that I can trust what I'm seeing. Like that is actually where the road goes. So if I hear look, I'm like, okay, sweet. And that's where I'm looking is accurate.
Yeah.
Little words like that.
Yeah, I've heard similar language in Baja.
Yeah. No, Baja's a whole different other beast. It's like even further on pace notes, they're doing it for so long. I just can't. Yeah. I'm too soft for Baja.
Yeah. So our next question is, where do you see this part of the industry going in the future with the state of our economy and the current political climate? Which I'm hitting you with all the hard questions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm nervous I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that what we're doing is going to completely end in our lifetime. I think it's going to get harder and harder. With the push of EV and material getting harder, and if the economy takes a shit, that's going to slow up things a lot, especially on higher end builds. So I'm nervous. I'm not trying to dread it or losing sleep at night. I'm aware and trying to pay attention to what's trending with everything going on in the world.
Yeah.
But it can be a little scary. I've talked to Aaron Kaufman about it a bunch because he's right at the pulse with dealing with a lot of high bigger companies that have more information than I do.
Totally.
And what he said kind of backs up what I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think we're all going to have to figure out and practice some bit of resilience because it's not going to look the same. That's for sure. That's the only thing we do know. But, as far as racing goes, maybe we're not building as many cars as we want, but I'm hopeful that we're going to be just fine for, the foreseeable future as far as, most of the racing still being there. But I'm with you. It is a bit nerve-wracking because, me personally, I don't have a whole bunch of overhead, but I also don't have a whole bunch of gross. So it's just like I said, 15 cages a year, I lose 5 of those. I lose a significant chunk of my thing to the point where it's like, okay, is this a sustainable thing? So, but, and that my whole thing happened organically through problem solving of being like, okay, I work at, this design build shop making furniture and I want my own shop, and what I had to do to make that happen. You have to be adaptful. I found adaptful. Is that even
adaptable?
Adaptable.
Adaptable. It works.
Yeah, adaptable. Yeah. Be adaptable.
Yeah.
But it won't look the same. But I think we're all pretty talented. We'll figure out a way.
Yeah, because I had a client here yesterday. He's not an active client. He's a past client. Mm-hmm. But he stops by and just checks on things from time to time. And he was a little worked up. And he's like, "What are you going to do if shit hits the fan?"
Yeah.
I have this saying that pisses a lot of people off, but I love it. It's if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. I don't focus on ifs and buts.
Yeah.
But if shit hits the fan and the economy tanks and all my clients pull the plug and I don't have any work, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I can weld, I can fabricate stuff, I can make stuff. If we get hit by nukes tomorrow.
Yeah. Yep.
None of it's going to matter.
Yeah,
anyway.
None of it's going to matter anyway. If I go bankrupt, I'll go work as a door greeter at Walmart,
Yep. And there's so I went to art school. I did 6 years at the Art Academy of Cincinnati, majored in sculpture. And I took a class, just a critical thinking class. And one of my favorite quotes that I heard was that success in art is kind of dictated by 3 things. At first, it's just talent. Talent, if you have talent, that'll be enough. But at some point, talent's not going to be enough. Mm-hmm. And so you have to get creative. And so not only do you have to take that talent, you have to be creative on how you use that talent. For me, I applied it to being mobile. That's a creative way to use my talents. If creativity and talent doesn't work, it's all about attitude. So let's just think of famous people, Renaissance art. The good art was just how good is this painting? Mm-hmm. And then it kind of shifted into Picasso. How creative is this painting? And then it went to attitude, where it's all just Andy Warhol, crazy. Yeah. You're like, what is this? So I think I always apply those 3 things. If I feel like something's not working, if I'm okay, talent alone is not doing it, I just have to get creative. And if creative's not working, then I have to shift my attitude.
Yeah.
So, and keep trying those things until it works out.
Yeah, and it's funny, before you started saying that, I was thinking of Jeff Goldblum, life will find a way.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And,
yeah.
And those 3 steps, it's the same thing. You are adapting to your situation and you're using your skills, your creativity to move forward.
Yep.
And
totally.
It's like everything. People think oh, you're a business owner, you have it all figured out. What's going to happen if this happens?
Yeah.
What about the people that work 9 to 5 and they've been there 20 years and
oh, yeah,
you get laid off tomorrow?
Oh, yeah. Totally.
You're in the same boat. We're just going to figure it out. Like, you just can't give up and crawl under a rock and cry yourself until you just figure it out.
Yeah.
It's like everything with building cars, fabricating a part, doing woodworking, painting a picture. You just fucking do it.
Yep.
You know, quit thinking about it and just do it. Execute.
Yep. Totally. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. I feel like we've actually already experienced some of like the economy tank with just like the pandemic, you know?
Oh, definitely.
And I don't know about you, but that March 2020, I lost my entire summer of gigs because everyone's just like, well, I don't know what's happening. Last thing I do is want to have you come here. And I'm like, okay. And I had to get creative. And honestly, some of my fondest business memories was that first few months traveling around feeling like an outlaw. You know, like I went down to an Airbnb that I had to call the guy that it wasn't through Airbnb. I'm just like, hey, I stayed here before. I'm in the area. I know no one's allowed to be anywhere, but can I like just crash in my van like at your place? He's like, sure. And some of those like outlaw experiences, you know, like I was like, holy crap, I've been training for a pandemic this whole time because essentially, you know, being mobile is it has set me up to where
kind of self-sufficient.
Yeah, well, and like people did, you know, that were home and had tons of time were hitting me up more because they don't have work to go to. So, you know, I think before, you know, the pandemic, I was a little bit more like I wanted to settle down and have a shop and, you know, up my craft because I was craving, you know, better tools, better stuff. But then I saw the market and I'm like, this is something I need to be doing to basically, you know, keep myself going. And it was the best decision because now after that, you know, I spent 2 years pretty much straight on the road and it was awesome. Yeah. But it wouldn't have happened if it might have happened, but the you know, economic struggles, you know, sort of incubated that process.
Yeah. Cause I know a lot of people struggled during the pandemic, you know, with mental health and the uncertainty of the future. And it was scary for a lot of people, but I'm kind of along the same lines as you. I since 2016, I've had a locked door policy. I don't like a lot of visitors. Yeah. So nothing changed other than I got to wear a bandana when I went to the bank, which is pretty cool. You know, when has anybody ever been allowed to wear a mask going into the bank? So that was the only cool thing about that. But I mean, you know what? Same thing. It's like I trained for this. I didn't have visitors. I was way more productive. I spent less money. It was making the best situation out of a potentially bad time. And I know not everybody was that fortunate, but you know, at least for me, that really helped. Yeah. Well, and you've been, again, training for it forever because just to be self-employed from the beginning is a certain level of having to be okay with the uncertainty of being like, you know, I don't know when the next paycheck's going to be, you know, I don't know. Like, so you already kind of are comfortable in that state of mind of being like, I'll figure it out. Yeah. You have to be that way to be self-employed anyway. Yeah. Part of being a small business owner is you have to live comfortably in being uncomfortable. You know, it's you just can't be. You know, you're not going to be all warm and fuzzy. It's you just deal with it. Just like I'm not successful because I'm successful. I'm successful because I have fucked up a lot of shit and made a lot of mistakes, and I've learned along the way. You know, you have to fail to succeed. Totally. And it's the same thing. Like the pandemic just helped amplify, you know, hey, this is my strong suit. I'm not too worried about it because I never know what tomorrow is going to bring. Exactly. So, you know, and who knows, you've got everybody's in this industry has got so much skills that just are irreplaceable that even if, you know, we're not maybe working on the cars that we want to be working on, our skills aren't going to go anywhere and they're still going to be utilized. Yeah. So I think we'll be able to enjoy whatever that brings regardless. Yeah. And like I always get asked like, oh, what are you going to do when they ban gasoline and everything has to be an EV? That's not going to change for me because a lot of my clients are museums and collectors. Yeah. You don't have to have gasoline in a car to let it sit in a museum. Totally. And eventually those cars that are in museums, unless they're immaculately cared for and climate controlled, they're going to deteriorate and then we'll start the process over, which may or may not be a long-term solution. But I mean, I'm 35 right now. Not that I'm ready to retire, but if I make it another 10 years, my body's going to be so broken down from abuse anyway that,
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to have to go do something else. Like,
Well, people have been modifying and racing cars since the beginning. So
Oh, yeah.
electric cars still have to have a chassis and a body. So
Oh, yeah.
they're,
Yeah.
they're going to race them. They're going to modify them. They're going to customize them.
yeah,
so
the first two guys that raced a car were racing their horses to get to the cars. You know?
Yeah, no, and it's gonna be different, but
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure we'll see everybody in history has gone through this of we don't know what the future is going to hold. I mean,
Yeah.
look at 60s drag racing versus modern drag racing. Nobody could have envisioned that. It's a total different perspective. So it's the same thing, and we're just going to have to evolve and take it as it comes. And
totally.
if we don't like it, take our toys and go home and find something else to do with ourselves.
Totally.
It's
Yeah, well, one thing too is like not to be like, well, I'm not worried about it, but like rally cars, they have to be road legal. And they
Yeah.
have to be insured. They have to be smogged. They have to be road.
oh, I didn't know they had to be smog tested and
I
stuff.
didn't
That-
know.
I mean,
realize that
if
either.
if it's in a state that requires it, like
Yeah.
if you're in Pennsylvania or something, your car, it has to be a registered, completely legal road car. If
Oh, wow.
anything, more legal than half the cars you see out there.
Yeah, that's wild. Like I thought most rally stuff was straight up race car, like
Yeah, I
no
did too.
title, no
No.
emissions, anything. That's
No,
awesome.
yeah, you have to. It's because essentially to get to and from the closed roads, you have
Yeah.
to drive on the regular road. So you can get pulled over, and there's like no like the transits. That's what they call them. 2 different stages. You have to abide by all the laws that normal road cars do. But
So
yeah.
is it specific to that model year? Is that
There are some allowances in that sense. Like historic cars, if it was produced during a time that didn't have catalytic converters, then you don't have to have a catalytic converter. But yeah, every car has to have a cat. Every car, title, insurance, and not only insurance, it has to be like not the minimum
Yeah.
insurance.
You're not calling
Yeah.
Geico on your rally car.
No. And so, yeah, it's cool. There are definitely some sketchy title stuff that has happened. That's
No, I
for
think
sure.
that's in any
Yeah.
hot
Yeah.
rods racing.
How could you
it's
not?
sketchy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's that. But yeah.
was it like the whole emission system, like the evap system, and all that has to be all in place?
No. So pretty much the only thing it requires is a catalytic converter.
Okay.
But a lot of times people put them at the very end of the exhaust so they don't get warm and they don't do anything. So that's why you kind of see those sticking out the back of rally cars. But yeah, so a lot of the emissions, and the rules too are very restricted on what you can do to an engine in rally. So honestly, even if the restrictions did apply, I don't think it would really actually affect too many road going rally cars.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also like, why can't that also be a solution? Or just like maybe the answer is just we have a slightly compromised race vehicle because I don't know. Yeah.
Just more efficient. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, efficiency doesn't necessarily mean less power.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
It may take more engineering and more whatever to get that power. But
Yeah. Turbochargers are a pretty cool thing.
yeah.
Yeah, and just kind of off topic that doesn't have to do with the question. Are there any good local rallies? Like I know nothing about rally stuff, so like if I wanted to go to a rally in the next 6 months, I wouldn't even know where to go other than Google it, and that's how Google is. It tells you all the
Yep.
bad crap as well as the good crap.
I'm so glad you asked me that because kind of the biggest race in the country happens to be in Chillicothe, Ohio.
Really?
And it is June 9th, 10th, and 11th coming up.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool the way they're doing the schedule this year. On Thursday, June 9th, they're doing a street stage. So they're going to close some of the Chillicothe streets, and we're going to do 2 stages on the streets. And then day 2 is out in the woods, I think in the Portsmouth area. And then day 3 is in the Zaleski State Forest. So that's, just a hop and a skip away, and it happens to be the biggest national event that there is, and just
Yeah.
happens to be in our backyard.
Yeah, I never would have even
Yeah.
thought that. Like I figured
Yeah.
you'd have to go to Colorado for something like that.
Yep. Nope. Travis Pastrana will be there. Ken Block.
Wow.
All the big guys. I'll be
Yeah.
racing my own
Yeah.
Volvo. I'll be
That's pretty
80th on the road. Those guys are first on the road. But Yeah, no, the most of the rallies it's a traveling circuit. So there's some in New England, Upper Peninsula, Michigan, Tennessee, out west in Washington. There is a rally in Colorado and one in Ohio.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was actually the Sunriser 400 back in the 80s and 70s actually too. But yeah, there's kind of a rich Ohio rally heritage, which is cool. It's coming back. The first event that coming back since the 80s was in 2017. So hoping that it starts. There's 95 entries, so that's pretty big race.
And it's funny because, like, not that Ohio gets a bad rap, but kind of our area, there's no automotive stuff. I mean, Cincinnati is a huge hotbed for hot rods, drag racing. I mean, rally stuff that, I mean, I never would have known about. Like, Ohio has a lot going for it in the automotive field.
All kinds of motorsports.
Well, in Columbus too is crazy. There's like a few, like I have somebody acid or baking their shell, so it comes to me completely bare. And he's coming from Kansas City. He's like, yeah, the closest oven was in Columbus, Ohio. And I'm like, well, perfect. Just drop your shell off to me after that. But it's just like, what? Like they come into Columbus, Ohio for crazy specific race car stuff. I never would have thought that.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild.
Yep.
So the standard show question, I've talked about it 4 times, so I don't have much to say. But what is some advice you would tell young guys or anyone else looking to pursue fabrication more seriously? And for you, it could be even getting into rally, getting into the sport.
Yeah.
Like, what would you tell them to get involved?
I think with everything, there's never going to be the right time. I think if I had any advice to give somebody, it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, just start tomorrow. And I saw that in art school a ton. Was a lot of my classmates sort of had the mentality that at the end of the 4 years, there's going to be some glowing beacon of like, opportunity. And it's like, no, that never came. So, I was my sophomore year looking for internships and just grinding. And I feel like that paid off, because I was like, it doesn't matter. There is no... the degree is not going to do anything. This is me learning my skills now.
If you wait for opportunity to present itself, you're going to be waiting forever. You have to go out there and manifest that opportunity to fruition.
Totally. And if somebody's like, I struggled with a bit of it, at the beginning of a slight, I don't want to say imposter syndrome, but like, I knew I was a good welder. I knew I could build stuff, but, I built my own roll cage. But at some point, you have to kind of be like, yeah, I'm going to build yours and I'm going to deliver on it. And that's a scary feeling, too.
And you have to present yourself as a salesman, which is hard.
Yep.
Like when I started, I mean, I would go to every car show, cruise in with a business card. I'd talk to everybody. And I hate talking to people.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, hey, my name's Mike. I'm starting to do this. This is what I offer.
Yep.
Come check me out.
Yep.
Everybody I could talk to with a car that I found interesting.
Yeah.
And it's just that whole thing. You have to get off the couch and just do it.
Yep. There is no going to be the right time. Like, like there's within that, you might need a special tool that you really want. You might have to wait for it or something. But like for the most part, like, I mean, you're just going to have to start doing it. There's like, I do get asked a lot, like how I, got into this. And it's just like, I just did it. There was no person that I met that like.
I'm glad you said that because everybody's like, oh, same thing. How do you do this? How do you do that? You just do it.
Yeah. And
it wasn't that a Nike slogan, just do it.
Yeah,
or something. It's the same thing. Like how do you make a sandwich? You go to the fridge and you just do it. How do you build a race car? You do the research and you just do it. How do you pick up chicks at the mall? You go there and you do it.
You try.
And if one chick says no, you go to the next one. You just keep after it and you get better and better and you just don't take no as an answer. You just physically get off your mom's couch, put your pants on and do it.
And for me, there was no plan B. Like from day one, it's just like it may not be like we're talking about resilience, and it might not be what I pictured it being.
Oh, and it never is. It
never
always
is.
evolves.
But like you just got to do it.
Yeah.
Can't say much more than that.
Yeah, and I'm sure people are going to get tired of listening to it because it's everybody that's been on has said the same thing.
Yeah.
They've worded it different or made it sound a little bit more fuzzy, but you just do it.
Well.
You can read every book under the sun. You can watch every YouTube video. You could You could go to college for 20 years and you could be the most educated person in the field ever.
Yep.
But until you do it, you don't know shit.
Or you could be like, you could be the best bench TIG welder ever and have done nothing but practice pieces for 20 years, and you're just a god. And the second you have to be uncomfortable at your bench, like I find that a lot too, is a lot of people, like if I'm going to, I'm in the process of trying to up my TIG game, and I'm trying to get my hands on more TIG aluminum, and I keep finding that I can do it when I'm practicing.
Yeah.
But it's not until I have like a project that's like requires some aluminum work, and I've got the pressure on the line that I actually learn anything.
Yeah.
So I think being a little bit more, I don't want to say reckless, but just being like, you can probably just try, like even if it's like a roll bar or something that you're okay with your welding, just try and be like, holy crap, that was horrible. Cut it out, and then, maybe hit somebody up. But until you like try and do it yourself, you're never going to get any better.
Yeah.
And learn from your mistakes. Like when you mess it up, look at it and try to understand it so that you can do it better the next time.
And that's the thing, is you're not going to ruin, I mean, technically you could ruin something to the point of disrepair.
Yeah.
But most of the stuff that comes through here, people are like, oh, can you do this? I don't know. I've never done one before.
Yeah.
I'll give it a shot. Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Be like, look, dude, I fucked up.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have taken this on. You don't owe me a dime. I put it back to the way it was when it was here, or slightly better.
Totally.
I mean, it's not like they're going to cut your hands off if you can't perform. They'll be a little upset and they'll be like, yeah, motherfucker, you said you could do this and you couldn't.
Yep.
But it's not like you charged them $20,000 to not do the job.
Totally.
You have to get out of that comfort zone of getting off the couch and doing it to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Yep. No, totally agree. Yeah, I've just learned and like, not even just mistakes, but just general dissatisfaction is just a powerful tool. Powerful tool to get yourself better.
Yeah.
And again, none of that happens until you just start.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to do enough of it to know what you're
Yep.
know what you're not doing correctly or you're not satisfied with.
Totally.
Yeah. And then that gets worse and worse. We mentioned it earlier. Your level of satisfaction is going to go up way higher than your skill set. So the better you get, the least happy you're going to be with your work. But that's what drives us to get better and better, because we're always reaching for that unattainable goal.
Yep.
I see this thing floating around all the time. There's two different versions. When you're at a racetrack, there's some 5-year-old kid that thinks you're a god.
Yeah.
So treat it like that. It's the same thing. 5 years ago, right now you were exactly where you wanted to be 5 years ago.
Yep.
Don't let yourself down, because it's the same thing. In 5 years, I'm not going to be here anymore, and I'm going to look back and be like, man, I sucked.
Yeah.
But that's just progress.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's funny to be like, I get a lot of people at the races because I did my Volvo cage, a few years ago, and it was all out of like scrap, and like just literally the design was dictated by how much scrap I had. So some of the stuff doesn't flow right, but I'll get people walking up to me and be like, oh, can I see it? I'm like, don't look at
don't
here.
Look at it.
Don't look at this one. Here, let me show you pictures, or so go look at that car.
Yeah.
But it's crazy, because when I did that cage, I was like, oh, this is awesome. I'm very happy with this. And now you look back and you're like, oh, God. Like,
yeah. And that's about, you can't dwell on that. Like, I can be super bad on that. I'll look at stuff sitting in here that I've been working on for a long time, and I'm like, man, I want to redo everything on this.
Yep.
But it's not as bad as we make it seem. It's like similar to, I don't even know the term for it. If you think you're super fat.
Yeah.
You're probably not as fat as you think you are. It's the same thing. Your skills aren't as poor as you think they are. You're looking down on yourself and trying to beat yourself up. And that's part of the problem, is you have to push through that and just focus on today and tomorrow.
Yep.
Don't look back at how you feel you were inadequate or you shouldn't have charged this or whatever. Like, it's the past. Leave it lay there and just move forward.
Yep. And it's super healthy to like talk about that too, because I think I see, I don't know if you see it, but like a lot of like the fabrication world, I see so many like, come to my shop, we're the best, all this stuff, and I'm just like, I don't know of a place that I could sit there and just call myself the best. Like, like that is a red flag right then and there. It's like, I'm often dissatisfied. I know I do good work, but I'm often dissatisfied with it.
Yeah.
And I know it's good work, I know it's going to do its job, but I'm going to let someone else say, it's great work or something.
Yeah.
And I would much rather be working with somebody that's like, oh no, the next, like this next project is going to be my best,
Yeah.
you know, versus somebody that's like, oh, I am the best. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have anything to learn.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. I'm the same way. I've finished projects and I've been happy with it and proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I can always stand there and look at it and like, I could have done that better.
Yeah.
And that would have made it better. So I can't say no way I could ever say that was my best work.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, because there's no such thing as your best work. Everything is going to be, you know, a learning experience, and you know, especially doing the podcast. So this is what, episode 5. I have learned so much in 5 weeks. That's, you know, I'm going to continue to learn to make the podcast better, and it's the same thing. You know, every day we drive, just on the street, our driving should be getting a little bit better because we're learning things. Like we have to be self-aware. In the shop, out of the shop, everything should be constant growth, personal, professional. You know, I don't want to sound like a new age motivational speaker because that's not what I'm going for. Like, don't listen to anything I say. I'm full of shit. But you know, it's what it is. Like, once I started getting into that mindset of chasing being better tomorrow than I am today, everything changed exponentially. You know, like. I feel that the 16 years I've been in business, it's been huge. And, you know, the first 5 or 6 years, like I know everybody struggles when they first get started.
Yep.
But once I moved beyond that, oh, I'm just a new business, blah, blah, blah. I'm doing the best I can, and actually put that into practice of, you know, tomorrow is going to be much better and my quality is going to be better. It was, instead of moving day by day, it was like I was moving week by week and then month by month. You know, each day was almost like a month of improvement because I was focusing on improvement.
Totally. And it gets easier too. I've always said that getting good at something doesn't necessarily mean that the results have changed. It might be that it's easier for you to produce the same result.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't take as much, you know, effort. I find myself with that. It's like, my half-assed now is better than I could have dreamed of 3 years ago, you know, and I'm sure, you know, 3 years from now, I'm going to say the same thing, but it's crazy. You have little projects like I'm a MIG welder mostly. So you have a certain X standard of fitment. I've did a few tubing TIG projects where you have to get way tighter, but now once I've like kind of standardize that as my fit up. It's not like, oh, my fit up for MIG and my fit up for TIG. It's like, no, just my fit up now.
Yeah.
It's the same thing now. And that wouldn't happen unless, you know, you progress your skills.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, does anybody else have anything? I mean, I think that's a really good stopping point.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be a common theme. You know, we're all in this together, and we're all like-minded people on this episode and other episodes. So the listeners out there are going to hear the same thing over and over, and we're not trying to bore you. And I hate to say fact because it's not really fact, but it's what we all feel is driving us.
Right.
You know, it's our fact. It's an anecdotal fact, but whatever. You know.
Well, isn't it weird that everyone that seems to be like, you know, in this chair has similar things to say.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, and even if you want to like boil it down to the simplest thing, just learning how to weld, somebody's like, oh, you can't really teach it. You just got to feel it. And you're like, that's a bullshit thing. What do you mean? Like, teach me how to weld. And it's like, oh shit. Yeah, no, it is just like a feeling. You can't explain some of it. And,
I mean, I've done some welding classes here, and it's the same thing. Like, teach me how to weld. I'm like, so this is an 8-hour welding class, and I'm going to tell you how to weld in 30 minutes. That's bullshit. Why am I paying for 8 hours? I'm like, I can only tell you so much to get your foot in the door.
Yep.
The rest of it is all hood time. You got to sit there and you got to be like, oh, I dipped the wick. I don't want to do that anymore. You know, and it's just the same thing. It's, you know, we can only tell you so much, and I'm not trying to be preachy about anything.
Right.
You know, but I want to help new guys that have been in the industry forever. You know, somebody that's struggling with a bad client, or they're stuck in their own head, like, I'm struggling, like I suck, I hate what I do. Fix it. You know, we all struggle with the same mental issues. You know, we all have self-doubt, and, you know, we all have imposter syndrome at some point. You know, we all have good days, bad days. And I think if we unify together and we're all in the same boat and we all have same feelings at some point in our careers, you know, for me, it helps not put people on a pedestal too.
Yeah.
I get that all the time. Like, people like, oh, why won't you answer my question? I'm like, I will answer your question, but you're not liking the answer.
Yeah.
And
totally.
they're like, well, I put you on a pedestal. I'm like, you put me there. I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm a human being. I make mistakes. I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
But, I don't think anybody should be on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Like, some people, we're not all the same, but we're all the same. If that makes any sense
No,
whatsoever.
absolutely. I was thinking about that on my way over here because I'm just like, I have always looked up to your work and like we're doing two different things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's two different things. And what's cool is like I can use, your services for some of the, pre-cut parts I need and a lot of the sheet work. And then, I can do what I'm good at and do my own thing. And it's cool because everyone has a different flavor and an avenue that we can all, but at the end of the day, we're all doing the same thing. We have the same vocabulary.
Yeah.
We know what we're talking about when we say things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, except for me. I mean, I just make it up every day.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No.
And like the thing with me is I want everybody to be approachable. Like I can appear standoffish because I lock the doors and I don't allow visitors and all that stuff. And some people don't like that.
Yeah.
I get it. But, like I don't know, what was it, 3 years ago you reached out like, hey, man, can you do this?
Yep.
Great. You know, I mean, I knew who you were. We had just never worked together.
Totally.
And I want everybody that's going to be on this podcast for the coming years. And I mean, we're going to have lots of people over and over. But we should all be working together to help each other.
Absolutely.
Don't be intimidated by one another. You're going to get the random asshole that nobody wants to work with because he's an asshole. And we all know that. But the vast majority of shops and independent fabricators, we're all trying to work together and help each other out.
Well, and a lot of the like stuff that might be seen as standoffish is like from a self-employed fabricator. That's just like a way of preserving your craft and your skill, and like you're like I can't
your sanity.
Yeah, exactly. Your work will be better if you are just happier. And if that means that like please don't like I know how I am sometimes. Like even if I think somebody's gonna show up behind me, like I can't start the weld or something, and just like, So if there's like you're just doing what is necessary to be able to, keep your standard of craft, which is extremely high. So
yeah. Well, cool. Go ahead and plug your social media stuff again, just for anybody that didn't hear it the first time.
Yeah. My Instagram handle is avacado_Brock. It's spelled AVOCADO_BROCK. And then I also have a YouTube channel where I sort of just do 2-minute recaps of sort of some of my adventures. And it's, again, Avacado Brock, just no underscore.
Nice. And Brian, what's your stuff?
I have an Instagram. It's Gasser57, GASR57.
Yeah, and I need to work on having you post more stuff because you don't post that much.
I'm pretty bad about that.
Yeah, and my stuff's Cornfield Customs on everything. For the guys that don't follow me, I really appreciate you coming on, and we'd love to have you back at some point. Maybe it'd even be kind of cool in the future if we did. I don't know much about Rally, but if there's, I think the one in a few weeks is too soon, but maybe come out. We can take my enclosed with. I'm gonna have like a mobile studio in it.
Oh, that'd be super cool.
That way it's live at the track kind of thing. Because we're gonna do that at Bonneville.
Totally.
So do some other events. To keep everybody that's been on the show kind of tied up and check back from time to time. So again, thanks for coming on. It was really awesome. Next week's guest will be Jordan Dickinson from Union Speed and Style, also known as Pineapple J on Instagram. It's going to be really good. He's building some cool stuff. So if you have questions that you want to ask me or him, feel free to email those over at the Fabrication Station Podcast at gmail.com. Please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and tell a friend so we can keep the podcast growing. Thanks for everybody that's already submitted your questions, and keep them coming. And most importantly, thanks for listening and the continued support, and we'll see you next week.